What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got another comparison video for you. So today we are going to do a comparison of all of my silver linear hollow polishes. I recently did a video like this with all of my black linear hollow polishes, and I thought it was really interesting to see polishes from different brands that I thought were very similar and put them side by side and kind of see which ones are the most hollow, which ones are the least expensive, and just kind of compare them overall. And I was really struggling with how I wanted to do this video because I also have a bunch of scattered hollow silvers and I also have a lot of hollow toppers that are silver. So I decided I'm going to split this video up. Today we're focusing specifically on linear hollow. So what that means, I've talked about it before, but basically we are looking for a hollow pigment that gives us lines of rainbow. Now this is a little bit different from a scattered hollow, which basically from the name you can tell it just means there's little scatters of hollow. It doesn't necessarily make a line. So generally we're working with smaller pigment, but we're also working with a more concentrated amount of it. So I've got 12 polishes to go over today. It was actually really fun to compare them and see just how different they are, even though they all seem like they're the same in the bottle. But that being said, they're obviously incredibly similar, so I'm going to be repeating myself a lot in this video. But there are three key factors that I wanted to keep in mind when I was swatching these. Thing number one is how it applies, the formula, the opacity, how thick or thin the polish is, because some hollows tend to be really thin and watery and some are really thick. It's obviously up to personal preference which one you prefer, and I think that could be said about all of the three key factors that I'm mentioning, but just something to keep an eye out for while I'm swatching. Thing number two is how holographic the polish is. Obviously this is very important, whether you prefer something that is really subtle or something that is super in your face rainbowy. And then thing number three is how big the hollow particles are. So even though we're only working with linear hollows, there are really fine hollow pigments, and there are also some bigger hollow pigments, and that's going to affect how sparkly the polish is. With a finer hollow, you're going to get a more uniform look, but it's not going to catch the light and sparkle randomly. Whereas when you're working with bigger hollow pigment, it's going to sort of have like a diamond prism kind of effect. So whatever portion of your nail is hitting the light, it's going to sparkle a little bit more. So hopefully that makes sense. It might not, but as I go through the polishes, you'll see a little bit more what I'm talking about. And obviously one thing to keep in mind, I was not a part of making any of these polishes, so I can't say for 100% fact if we are working with a smaller pigment, but just based on what I can see, I'm gonna explain them to you to the best of my ability. So yeah, we may as well just dive in. I've got 12 of them to go over. They're all really fun polishes, so let's just do it. We'll start off with Color Club Harp On It. I feel like this is a classic silver linear hollow. It's a drugstore brand, so it's more readily available. It has a really thin, easy formula, and it's actually surprisingly opaque. It was almost a one coater for me, which I was really impressed with considering it's a very thin formula. But I think that Color Club just has a really nice formula in general, and with their hollows, they're very well known for being super high sparkle. Now in terms of the size of the particle, I would say this is about average. So this is kind of the basis where I compared the other polishes, because I would say this is the standard for hollow pigment. It's not too big, it's not too small, which is not to say that it's boring, just that this is, I would say, the median. So one thing to keep in mind with this polish is the one that I'm using has a round skinny brush. That's because I'm using an older bottle. Since I've gotten my polishes, they have updated their brush. So now they have a wide flat brush. So if you do buy a new one, that's the brush that you're gonna get. But yeah, like I said, it's a classic. It's a very good, it's got a high holographic sparkle to it. So this one, the price is gonna vary depending on where you get it. I saw it on Amazon. The 15 milliliter bottle retails there for $10 USD. So that breaks down to 67 cents per milliliter. Next up, we have China Glaze OMG. This is a polish that has been released a couple of times, and it's another mainstream brand. And I have to say, this one I think looks very disappointing in the bottle. When you look at it in the bottle, you really only see silver. You don't really see that rainbow hollow. And this is a great example of how how holographic pigment shows up more after the polish is dry, but once it dries, you really see just how holographic it is. And I do think that's something to keep in mind with holographic polishes as a whole. I think they always look more hollow when they're dry. This one I would say has a slightly smaller hollow particle. So again, we're working with a more uniform linear hollow look. This is another really thin formula, but I would say this one's actually a little bit more on the sheer side. I get full coverage in 2 coats, but I do have short nails, so I think for most people this is going to be a 3-coater. It's definitely a more subtle hollow, and I think that's because we have that smaller pigment in there, so there's not really that sparkle factor. It's kind of just those uniform lines of holographic pigment. It actually kind of feels a little pastel-y to me. So this one is actually not currently available from the brand, but it is available on Amazon. It comes in a 14 milliliter bottle, and I saw on Amazon it was $7.09 USD. So that comes down to 51 cents per milliliter. Next up, we have an indie polish. This is Scream Nails Hallelujah. This is actually one of the more holographic silvers I've tried recently. I was really impressed with it. It's fairly new. It has medium-sized particles, but there are a couple of bigger particles within it that I think add a little bit of extra sparkle. It is kind of sheer in the first coat, but I do get full coverage in 2. And one other thing to keep in mind about this polish is it does come with the ice cream cone cap. I know that's a little daunting for some people. I don't personally think it makes application more difficult, but it does feel weird when you first start using it. So just something to keep in mind. So this one is in a 10 milliliter bottle, and it retails for $13.50 USD on the Scream Nails website. So that comes out to $1.35 per milliliter. Next up, we have Cirque Colors Subculture, and I always say this is my most holographic silver, and I think I actually still have that opinion. I think this one is very intensely holographic. Even in indirect lighting, you can really see that rainbow line of color in there. So it is a linear hollow, but there are also those bigger holographic flecks throughout. So again, you have that really nice sparkle factor in there. And this is a really great formula. It's actually a little bit thicker than those very thin, almost watery hollows, but I wouldn't say this one is thick either. I would say it kind of just applies like normal cream nail polish, and it's also very opaque, so this one is almost a 1-coater on me. So this one comes in an 11 milliliter bottle, and on the Cirque website it retails for $14 USD, so that's about $1.27 per milliliter. Next up, we have Starly Magic Rainbow. This is another go-to for me because you guys know I love Starly. This one I would say is medium to slightly larger particles. It gives off a very sparkly appearance. I have a feeling that there's 2 different sizes in here because it kind of catches the light differently rather than having that uniform line in there. This is very hard to describe, but hopefully the visuals are helping a little bit. But yeah, we have another really nice formula here, pretty opaque, almost a 1-coater, and it doesn't feel very thin on application either, but it also doesn't feel too thick. And we do get a pretty big bottle for being an indie brand. This is a 15 milliliter bottle, and the polish retails for $16 USD on the Starly website. So that averages out to about $1.07 per milliliter. Next up, we have Holo Taco Circuit Breaker. And this is another one where I would say the particles are medium to slightly larger. I do think that the particles in this one are a little bit bigger than the Starly particles. So you're definitely getting a lot of that sparkly factor to it. It feels a little bit more multifaceted, and this is another one that feels a little bit sheer on the first coat, but I do get full opacity in 2 coats on this one. Again, not too thin or watery, but it's also not a very thick formula. This is another one that has a round skinny brush. So this one comes in a 12 milliliter bottle, and it retails for $14 USD on the Holo Taco website. So that comes out to about $1.17 per milliliter. So moving on, we actually have 3 different polishes from ILNP. They have a polish called Mega, and then they've also made other variations of Mega. So there are 3 that I would consider to be a part of the linear hollow family. So we have the original Mega, we have Mega L, which I assume stands for linear, and we have Mega S, which I assume stands for scattered, but I would still consider this to be a linear polish, so I'm going to include it in this video. They do have one that I would consider a scattered Mega, but I will include that in my scattered hollow video. But let's start with the regular Mega first. So this one, again, I would say this is the the medium particle size, that really average size that we see, not too big, not too small, but we do have a little bit of that sparkliness factor in there. It's got a really nice formula. It's a little bit on the thicker side, but it's got a nice opacity, and I really love the ILNP brush. I would say it's a medium wide brush. It's not too round, but it's also not too wide. So I would say this is really just the medium as far as the megas go. So all of the ILNP polishes come in a 12 milliliter bottle and they retail for $10 USD, so about 83 cents per milliliter. So moving on to Mega L, again, I assume that means linear, and this one I would say is the most linear of the three. It has very, very fine particles, so it doesn't have as much of that sparkliness to it, but it does have those very uniform lines of rainbow. And again, I notice with these very fine particles, it almost gives a little bit of a pastel rainbow look, and that's what I get with this one as well. Again, a really nice formula, a little bit on the thicker side, but it does reach full opacity in 2 coats. And again, we're working with the same price here, so you've got the 12 milliliters and it costs $10, which is about 83 cents per milliliter. And then the final of the ILNP megas is Mega S, and like I said, I assume this one means scattered, but it is still definitely a linear holo in my opinion. And I would say out of the three, this is the most rainbowy holographic. We have slightly larger particles in here, and we definitely have a lot of sparkle going on. This one, I feel like you can even get a little bit of that holo in indirect lighting as well, because there's just a ton going on in here in terms of sparkle, but you still get those really beautiful lines of rainbow. Just to show you guys the three of them side by side really quickly, I would say as far as a scale goes, it goes Mega L, regular Mega, and then Mega S in terms of how big the particles are on a scale, and also how holographic the polish is on a scale. Because like I said, I do think that there's a little bit more of a sparkle when you're working with a bigger holo pigment. So moving on, we have What's Up Nails Welcome to Hollowood. This one's actually a stamping polish, but I thought that it would be really good to include because you can wear this as a regular polish as well, and I find this one to be super holographic. We've got, again, medium-sized particles. I really love the brush on this one. It's a wide flat brush, but it has a rounded tip, so it makes application super easy. And of course, because it is a stamping polish, it's super opaque, and it's a little bit of a thicker formula, which I think lends itself very well for stamping. Now, I am showing you what it looks like in 2 coats, but again, it's a very opaque formula because of the stamping factor. So if you're looking for a stamping holo polish, this is a great one, because like I said, they tend to run a little bit thinner. So this one comes in an 11 milliliter bottle, and it retails for $15.95 on the What's Up Nails website. So that comes out to about $1.45 per milliliter. This one is the most expensive out of the bunch, and I believe that's because it's a stamping polish. So they're using a lot more pigment in this one, and that's why it's very opaque. Next up, we have a polish from Uber Chic called Party On. This might not be a familiar brand to many people. This is actually another stamping polish, but again, I think this one is a good polish for applying normally. Again, we have those sort of medium to large particles. There's definitely a high amount of sparkle, but I felt like it looked a lot more sparkly in the second coat, which is pretty interesting considering it's a stamping polish. But again, it's very opaque. It's a little bit on the thicker side, and this is just another great stamping option. So this one is a 12 milliliter bottle. I got this from the What's Up Nails website, and there it retails for $12 USD, so about $1 per milliliter for this one. And last but not least for the comparison, we have A. England Palace. And this one's actually the outlier of the collection, but I really wanted to include it because it is still a silver linear holo, but this one is just slightly darker. It's almost like a gray holo. It's kind of funny because when I thought of this polish on its own, I did think it was very similar to how the other silver holos were, and that's why I wanted to include it, just because when you see it side by side, this looks like an entirely different color. I actually do have some darker gray holos, like the new Starly one that I recently reviewed, but I think that that's a different category than this. I would still consider this to be a medium gray, like almost a light gray. So it's interesting to see it compared, but if I do a video on more gray holos, I'll include this one as well so you can see it. But yeah, this is another really great formula. It's got a wide flat brush with a rounded tip. The holo in there, I would say, is a little bit more subtle. It's a little bit bigger, so it's kind of that medium medium large particle size, but there's not as much of it as in some of the others. This is super opaque. It's a slightly thicker formula. It's pretty much one coat opacity, so it's still very impressive in that regard. As far as availability, I don't think that this one is currently available. A few retailers have it on their website, but not currently in stock, but I found it to hover around $11 USD for the 11 milliliter bottle. So again, we're looking at about $1 per milliliter for this one. So yeah, those are all of my silver linear hollows. Like I said, I also want to do a video on my silver scattered hollows because those you can really see a lot of differences in, and also my silver hollow top coats. And we actually have some linear hollows and some scattered hollows in those, but I think I'm going to combine that in one video. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to see all of them side by side and just see, even though they're pretty much the exact same color, how different they are side by side, and see which ones are more sparkly and which ones are more holographic and which ones are more opaque. So it's definitely fun to do these comparisons. I would love to hear from you guys though, which of the polishes that I showed do you think is the best? Do you have any silver hollows that you highly recommend that I didn't include in this video? Leave them all in the comments, we can chat about it. And of course, if there are any types of polish that you want to see me compare, you can also leave that in the comments as well, and I'll add it to my list. But if you enjoyed this comparison video, please give it a thumbs up. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new videos every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. Huge shout out to my Cosmic Admirals on Patreon, Amanda M, Rocket Man's daughter, and Paula. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's fun fact question comes from Patreon supporter Jean, and Jean wants to know, if you could live in one of the books you've read, animes you've watched, or games you've played, where would you live? Ooh, that's kind of a difficult question because I think I love a fantasy world, but I also want to have current technology. And not a lot of the books that I like have both of those things. I actually just recently read the second book in the Crescent Cities series from Sarah J. Maas, and I think that one almost fits the bill because there are fantasy creatures, but it's also set in modern day. But the problem with that is that humans aren't really treated very well, so I wouldn't want to live there if I wasn't a fantasy creature myself. I don't know if I can think of one specifically, but I would love to live in a world where vampires or other fantasy creatures exist. I think that's pretty much my two requirements, are just fantasy creatures, also I need to be one of them, and modern day technology. So yeah, I don't know that I can think of one very specifically. But if anybody wants to share theirs, leave it in the comments. We can chat about it. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye!